I always have a constant fear to try new things in my life because I'm afraid of failure, since my failures in my life have dominated my successes. I think you mean there have been more failures than successes. Therefore, every time the idea comes for me to learn or to try new things, I freeze, and my path to any kind of achievement and the ability to get in touch with my inner guidance is blocked. Can you please help me to get in touch with the wisdom within me? Fear of failure. Yes, that's not uncommon. Of course, it's also a manifestation of ego, because the most important thing for the ego is the result of your action. It's focused more on what it wants to get out of the doing than the doing itself. The most important thing in a person's life is their failures, because more important, I would say, than the successes. Your main learnings and your main transformations you experience through making mistakes and failing. The successes are nice for the ego, but the spiritual breakthroughs, they come when you fail at something. So failure is not to be feared. First of all, it often opens you up to the spiritual dimension and takes you beyond ego if you have the courage to do it anyway. But also, you begin to learn what it is that is right for you to do, in many cases only by trying, by learning through failing at this and this and this, that these things do not resonate with what you really want to do. There was a time I was spared quite a few things in that respect, but once I applied to become a banker in the City of London. The City of London means financial district. I had an interview at a merchant bank. How could I have been so misguided to seek an interview at a merchant bank in the City of London? Incomprehensible. The miracle is that they actually invited me for an interview, and the only reason being that I was at Cambridge University, so they said, okay, we'll talk to him. And so I didn't get the job. So that was very lucky, because if I had gotten the job, I would have been a dismal failure and probably would not have lasted more than a few months. And that would have been a wonderful learning, but it got shortened for me. I didn't have to go through it. I realized shortly after the interview that it would have been a terrible mistake, but not really terrible. There was a learning. There would have been a deep learning in it. Later I applied for a job at a university as it's called in England, a lecturer, assistant professor would be here. They invited me for an interview, and that was after I'd already gone through a shift in consciousness, but wasn't fully integrated with my personality, my life. So I applied for a job, got interviewed by 5 professors around a big table, and I said a few things that might have given them an indication that I wasn't really into the academic world. One professor asked me at the end of the interview, and what do you really want to do? That was an important learning. And so when I walked away from there, of course I didn't get the job, luckily. that was a learning. I said, what do I really want to do? And I knew it's not this. I didn't know that I would become a spiritual teacher because I hadn't met this first person on the park bench yet that asked me a question. So to know what it is that you want to do, you may have to try out quite a few things and fail at them, and then finally find what it is that you really want to do. I talked to somebody, a relative of mine, who hasn't displayed any ambition in his life and stayed in the same job, simple job, for 25 years. And he said to me, we talked about failure and success, and he said, I've never failed at anything because I haven't tried anything. And it's true. So he was able to avoid all failure by not trying anything. But it does not lead to a fulfilling life. And sometimes failure means this is not for me. Sometimes failure means try again. And you fail and you perhaps try again. Especially if you enjoy the doing of whatever it is that you are doing, but then the result is not what you expected, but you certainly enjoyed the doing of it, try again. Let's say you want to become a musician. Now the ego may have an idea, it might have an image. You've been to concert halls and you saw these soloists on stage receiving applause, and you say, oh, I want to do that, says the ego. But you don't really have the love for music, you have the love for being a famous musician. So if you then start learning, then you won't be the greatest musician because the love isn't there. And if you then try again, you still won't succeed. And you try again, you still won't succeed because the entire premise is wrong. You have an egoic image of you as the great. The final result, the final outcome of your endeavor is to be the musician on stage that's famous and is being applauded. And you go, that's me. This is what I want to be. But in the meantime, you dislike the practice, and if you want to be on stage as a musician, you have to practice 5 or 6 hours a day. And you say, okay, I just have to get through this because I want to succeed at being a musician, and whatever it is, you practice. And then you get stressed and it doesn't feel good. But let's say you enjoy the practice because you love the music, and then you go to the conservatory and then they turn you down. They say, okay, I failed, but you love the music. Continue, try again. It might lead to something else, or next year they accept you at the conservatory, or it leads to some other kind of music that does not require the conservatory. If there is a love for the doing, then failure does not necessarily tell you that you should be doing something else. So, and whatever it is that you attempt to do, the vital factor is that you enjoy the doing and not just have a mental projection of where you want to get to, which is often an egoic image of yourself over there. That is so observe, choose things to try out that you actually enjoy doing without having an excessive focus on the end result, the so-called success at the end of all you're doing. That is, the success is to be aligned with what you are doing. So if you're practicing music, you're succeeding, or all the time if you're enjoying the doing of it, that is success, not some final outcome. The world is full of people, well, not full, but there are many people who have succeeded at what they wanted and were not satisfied by their success. they're still dissatisfied and unhappy, because the ego hasn't found real fulfillment in it. Oh, was that it? So enjoy the doing. Seek out things that you enjoy. Then if success is the final outcome, if there even is such a thing as final, then that is secondary. The enjoyment of the doing is primary. I met a girl, I was at university, and there was a girl who worked there. She said, I asked her, she worked in the restaurant, I asked her, what do you want to do with your life? She said, I want to be a brain surgeon. Okay, that's funny. Why do you want? Well, I think she said, brain surgeon, I think, is the greatest, the most advanced thing that a human could do. That's what I really want to say. Are you interested in biology? Are you interested in the body, in medical? No. But she had an image of me as the great brain surgeon, but for some reason her ego thought this is the highest the human being can achieve, to be up on the working on somebody's brain. So to have to project some kind of outcome and not realize in the meantime, the years in between, how about, and you're always traveling, you're on a journey, there's never really an arriving. Even the famous musician then there are other challenges there. Don't be afraid of failure. Ultimately, there is no failure. It's an essential part of your learning process. It's only the ego that is afraid of failure, because it has a certain image of who it is. Thank you. Thank you. This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation.